You enjoy the video. The new house that my sister had bought, where she asked me to move into, where I was paying for most of her mortgage, plus I was also maintaining it out of my own pocket. I painted it and installed new flooring myself. It was bigger and more comfortable and nicer than where I was previously living. But in the few short days that I had started living there, I had already lost more than what I seemed to gain. A week of living there, I had already tragically lost 2 cats and my beloved little companion dog that some evil person had poisoned. Meanwhile, I had now also become my elderly and very sick mother's full-time round-the-clock sole caretaker. Once again, not one family member came over to offer any assistance or support. I now found myself alone again, not only having to deal with my own disabilities, but now I was running ragged, as my siblings had now basically washed their hands of our mother, with different excuses and reasons of why she couldn't live with one of them, or why they also couldn't come over to help me to take care of her. My mother had taken turns at living in each one of my siblings' houses, where they all kicked her out, and she would go on to the next child's house, until a sibling dropped her off at my house with just a few plastic bags that contained only her worldly possessions. I took her in because my heart broke for her, after seeing how cruelly she had been treated by her own kids, and not one of them had the time or patience for her. She had now been abandoned by her own children, because she became a burden to them as far as they were concerned. Because she was now old and sick and couldn't fend for herself anymore. I was so devastated, as this all seemed so incredible to me. So I immediately set my mother up in my house, where she now had her own bedroom and bathroom and didn't need or want for anything. I had no idea, nor my siblings had told me, just how really sick she was. Because before she came to live with me, I would speak with her on the phone, but she herself had no idea of what was really wrong with her. So when she came to live with me, it didn't take me long to realize that my mother now had dementia and Alzheimer's. So upon her arrival to my house, I had a hospital bed installed in her room, along with a TV for her to watch, and all the other comforts that she needed. I had now become her everything, as my mother could no longer care for herself. I would wake up very early in the morning to start taking care of her by checking her vitals first thing, and then bathing her, and then preparing a nutritious breakfast for her. Then I'd sit her in the living room, where she could either watch TV or talk with me, as I could keep an eye on her while I would go to clean her bed linen every day. Then I'd sit with her and hold her hand, and I'd talk with her or brush her hair or rub some cream on her back. Then I would take her vitals again, and then make her lunch, which I would take to her in the living room. Then she'd usually fall asleep on her recliner, where I would then usually start washing her clothes and then dry them, fold them, and put them away. And then it would usually be time to start making her dinner, where I would have to spoon feed her, and then clean her again. And then I would take her outside to get some fresh air, which she would then want to go lay back down in her bed for the night. And I would give her medication, tuck her in, and plead with her not to get up in the middle of the night, for fear she would fall, where she would indeed get up in the middle of the night when I was sleeping, to which I would be woken up to her screams coming from the kitchen, where she would fall and where I would find her on the floor, and she wouldn't even know where she was or who I was. This was my now new routine every single day and night for a couple of years, where I would call my siblings crying and pleading with them to please come help their mother who needed them, and they did not come. Where finally rescue informed me one night after coming over to lift her up off the floor that they couldn't continue coming out to lift her up anymore, and they advised me to admit her into a professional facility for fear she would hit her head or break a hip when she fell. I sadly and reluctantly agreed and realized I had no other choice at this point. But I did manage to find her the closest facility near me where I would be there every day with her to tend to her. From the moment they opened to the moment they closed at night, where I would tuck her in every night. During her stay there, I never once saw any one of my siblings visiting her. I would go back home and wake up the next day and start all over, doing the same thing again. Until one night, while I was sleeping, the facility called me to inform me that my mother had been transported to the emergency room hospital, where I went to be by her side, and by the time I got there, she had already fallen into a coma. And the nurses and doctors told me that they had now stopped all of her medications, and she would have to be transported now to hospice, where I followed right behind the ambulance, and where upon arriving she was already in her new bed in hospice, where I then got in the bed with her and held her and kissed her and whispered in her ear how much I loved her and what a good mother she had been, but that I knew now she was tired and she now needed to rest and not to be afraid, because soon we'd be together again. Thankfully, my mother didn't seem to suffer as she took her last breath as I was holding her. By now all my siblings were there, all hugging and comforting each other, where I was ignored. So I left the room, and without saying a word, I went back home, where a couple of days later my siblings made all the funeral arrangements without including me. But I still did manage to attend my mother's funeral, again alone, where I was again ignored and made to feel like a stranger. And then again they all hugged and comforted each other at her funeral, as I again without saying a word left and went back home. And then I guess from all the stress, a couple of days later I wound up in the ER, where they admitted me for 1 week in the hospital with diverticulitis, where again no one came to see me, where I drove myself back home, still feeling groggy from all the medication they had given me, where I then packed up my mother's few belongings and divided them into 3 equal bags for each one of my 3 siblings to take. Where then, a couple of days after that, my sister informed me that I needed to move and find someplace else to live because she was selling the house. And then I saw myself again with nowhere to go. Thanks for watching, and I hope you come back for the next video. Please kindly subscribe to my channel, like, share, and leave your comments down below. And don't forget to click on the notification bell if you want to be notified of every time I upload a new video. Have a great day and be blessed. Bye for now.